think, well, firstly, on this particular album cycle, I've been to many places I've never been to before. I played Turkey for the first time. I played Bulgaria for the first time ever. And places that I've been to maybe with Porcupine Tree, but never been on my own. So like Russia for the first time. And I think one thing that's really become apparent to me on this tour is that there is a lot of long-term respect for what I've done over 20 years, and I really felt that very much on this album cycle, that there are people out there that even if they didn't like everything I did, they respect me now as someone that has been doing my own thing for 20 years, not compromising, trying to remain very focused as an artist in a time when it's very difficult to be an experimental musician, professional musician. And I think people begin to respect that. I think they began to respect that before, but I really begin to feel it this time around. And also what was wonderful this time is realize how many young fans and also girl fans, I think Hand Cannot Erase was an album that really connected with the female audience. Maybe because it was from a female character. Yeah. The character was female, so it was very strong, feminine, and I had Ninette singing with me, so there was like a female voice. And I saw the audience become almost, in some countries, 50%, female. But overall, I would say 30% now of the audience is female, which is a big change. It used to be 5%, maybe lucky. Now it's 30%, some places 40, 50%, and that's wonderful to see the audience. That's when I understand the audience is beginning to broaden out to just people that love music and not necessarily just people who listen to classic rock or progressive rock, and it's gone beyond that now, and that's a great feeling because I want my music to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. No, I'm very pleasantly surprised that so many of the shows on this tour have sold out, and I think again that's a sign that the audience has gone to a different level, a different place. It's reaching people that maybe weren't even aware of me 2-3 years ago, and now have discovered the whole world of my music, and I want that to carry on. Of course I do, because I still think there's a lot more people out there that haven't heard me. I was at the David Gilmour show yesterday in Verona, and I'm thinking to myself, all these people, if they could listen to my music, I think a lot of them would really like it, but only a very small percentage of them have even heard of me. So I still think there's a lot more work to do, but it's nice to see that it is growing, and it's growing in a very natural, organic way, and people are becoming very passionate about the music.
Yeah.
It's not, I think when people connect with the music, it becomes a very deep connection. I see people crying, in the audience on this. I actually started with the Raven tour because I used to see people crying at Raven that refused to sing, but now every night I see people crying, Routine, Raven, Lazarus, and it obviously has become a very deep emotional experience. Okay, it's a hypothetical question because I wouldn't go back to being in a band now.
Okay.
You're right, these guys are much more than session musicians because I ask them for ideas and I allow them to express themselves creatively, and I want them.
And they play on your albums too, so...
Yeah, and they play on my albums and they have suggestions. So they're much more than session musicians, but at the same time I'm still employing them and I pay them.
Okay.
And so I don't have the same responsibility to them. Listen, if I wanted my next record to just be completely a solo record where I played everything myself, I would say to the guys, this is what I'm doing, and they would say, oh, okay, fine, we understand, and there wouldn't be any fighting, and that's the difference. That's the difference for me. These guys are professional, they understand the situation, they're happy to contribute when I ask them to, and they love to contribute when I ask them to, but they also understand that it's my group and I pay them. And I think that playing this music a lot the first thing I would say is that I don't want to do the same thing again. I never do. I think every album I do is almost like a reaction against the previous album. So if I think of my first album, Insurgentes, was very different to Grace for Drowning, it was very different to The Raven, Hand Cannot Rose was very different to Raven, and similarly I feel with the next record. And I understand that there are many fans that would love me just to do Hand Cannot Erase Part 2, but I don't want to do that. And so I think that making a record or make a decision about where to go is always kind of like, well, what can I do that's different, that's exciting for me, that's new, that it gives me new challenges. Now, one thing that I just realised is I want Ninette more involved in the next record because she's been fantastic. She only did routine on Hand Cannot Erase. Now I think, wow, great, Ninette more involved, sing more with me, do more with, like duetting and using the female voice more. I want to do a record I'm writing. I've written about half of it so far. A little bit more song orientated. A little bit more contemporary sounding, perhaps a little bit less of the classic rock side of things. But listen, when I say those things, I worry that fans are going, he's selling out, he's going to do a pop record. And I'm not. It's still going to be a rock album. It's going to be very much an album that sounds like my work. It's still going to be very melancholic and all those things people associate. But it is different. One thing I also realised from touring is how much I enjoy playing the more song-orientated material. I love playing Lazarus. I love playing Harmony Korine, and I realise the fans love those songs too. I know that they also love the more long, progressive pieces, as I do. But I also realise that I haven't really made a record that focuses more on that side of my work for a long time. So I'm thinking, it might be nice to focus more on the song aspect. Still have the more epic stuff too, but perhaps more focused on the song-based material, and allow myself to be more of a songwriter this time. So that's all I can really say at the moment, because I'm still in the middle of it. It's still very dark. The subject matter is still very dark. How could it not be in the world that we live in? Yeah. It's always going to be dark. But the songs are a little bit more focused, and Ninette's involved more, a little bit more electronic in places. That's all I can say right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Transience was my record company's idea, and I have to say, if you look at my career, you'll see the one thing I've really resisted is compilation albums. There aren't very many. Porcupine Tree, there's only one, which is from the early days. No Man, there's one. That was kind of it. And most bands, by 25 years into their career, you'll find there's several. And I never did that. I didn't think it was appropriate, really. It felt always like the sort of thing you would do at the end of your career, and I always felt like I'm still making better music. But my record company came to me last summer and they said, what about an album of, in fact this in a way this is interesting, leading on from what we were talking about how the next album might be. My record company said to me, how about an album that really focuses on your songwriting, your more accessible work?
That's why.
And I thought, because originally I said, no, I'm not interested. And then they said, but what about, and I thought, actually that's an interesting idea, because it's kind of like a way of making an album that you could play to somebody that didn't know anything about me, that would be more like an introduction to my music and the more accessible side of my music. So songs, like Lazarus and like Deformed to Form a Star and Harmony Korine and Postcard and the title track of Hand Cannot Erase, Happy Returns. These kind of songs which you can just play them to anybody that likes music and they might find a way to open the door through to my music. So I thought that was a really nice idea, and we did it on vinyl last year for Record Store Day, and it went down pretty well. So now it's going to come out on CD. It's coming out on CD in October, and it'll be very cheap. It'll be cheaply priced, and just like an introduction to. So I really like that. I hadn't planned for that, but that was my record company's idea. But the one thing I had planned all along was that at some point there would be this companion release to Hand Cannot Erase.
For an half. Yeah.
With the songs that didn't fit in.
Yeah.
Because I really like those songs, like My Book of Regrets and Sunday Rain Sets In, Happiness 3. I really like those songs, but I couldn't fit them in. So I knew there would always be like an EP or something. Yeah. But it kind of grew a bit, and it became more like an album in a way. And that was something I always planned. And actually, historically, that's the kind of thing I've done a few times now. We did that with Fear of a Blank Planet. There was a nil recurring. Yeah, so it's something I've done before, and it's usually something I do when I have, a few songs left over that I'm very proud of that I couldn't fit on to the album.
Okay.
And it's nice for the fans too, I think, because they don't have to wait 2 or 3 years for the next album or some new music. They have something kind of in between. And for me, it goes back to the days when bands would release EPs and singles that weren't on the album.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And you can't really do that anymore, because there isn't really a market for singles,
No.
When I was growing up, I would buy singles, by the bands I love, and there would be a B-side that wasn't on the album or something. But these days, there's not really a market for singles. So these other songs kind of sometimes just get left over, So it's kind of my replacement to that idea of singles and keeping new music coming between the albums. I'm much less against. It's not really even that I'm against streaming. It's that I'm very much more a lover of physical music. I think things are getting better. I like streaming a lot more than I liked things like downloading onto iPods and MP3s, because at least with streaming, a lot of these services now have high resolution.
Yeah, right.
Things like Deezer and Tidal have high res. Even Spotify has a high resolution. So number one, if you like high resolution audio, you can listen in high resolution. And number two, I think the good thing, the way the industry is going with streaming, is that people are now again listening to albums from beginning to end.
Yeah, right.
One of the problems with iTunes, buying tracks for 99 cents each, is that people would just buy 1 or 2 songs. They'd buy the single, the song they'd seen on YouTube or MTV or whatever, and then they wouldn't really hear the song in the context of the album. But with streaming, because you just pay a one-off subscription charge, you're more likely to just say, okay, I'm going to listen to that album, put that album on and listen to it from beginning to end. So for me, it's like things are getting better, high resolution, more about the album. And also I think I have to acknowledge that if I'm not available on these services, there's a lot of people that are just never going to hear my music. And obviously at the end of the day, I want my music to reach as many people as possible. So personally, if you gave me the choice, of course, I would say I'd still prefer people would buy the album on vinyl or Blu-ray or CD or whatever. But I also have to acknowledge there's a lot of people that just don't even think like that. Buy a record, buy an album, Who would do that? Why would do that? But I still want them to hear the music, because you know what? They might come to the show. They might come to the show, they might buy a t-shirt.
Yeah.
They won't buy the record, but at least they'll be hearing it, and I think that's the more important thing for me. And I do think things are getting a little bit more close to, you know, with the high resolution and the emphasis on albums again, it's getting better for me.
Yeah.
There was a real low point in, you know, about 5 or 6 years ago with iPods for me, people just downloading 1 or 2 songs, making playlists.
Yes.
I know playlists are still part of streaming, but
you can listen the whole album.
you can listen, and you can listen in full high quality.
High quality.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, actually, to be honest, when it started, it didn't come from Ian, it came from EMI. EMI doesn't exist anymore, but in 2011, it was the 40th anniversary of Aqualung, and EMI approached me about remixing Aqualung. And because EMI they own the Ian doesn't own the recordings, EMI own the recordings. They approached me about doing Aqualung, and I was interested because I think it's a great record, but I think what was also interesting to me is I thought I could make it sound better, because it wasn't always, sonically, it wasn't the best sounding record, and Ian would be the first to agree with that. I'm not saying something it always sounded quite a bit muffled, a bit muted, so I was interested to see if we could get more clarity and more vibrancy out of the record, and I think we did, and I think it sounds really beautiful now, and much more, you know, really comes out and grabs you now in a way that it maybe didn't. And I think Ian was a bit worried about, as I think anyone, I would be, if someone said to me, oh, we've got this young kid, not that I'm a young kid, but we've got this younger guy and he's going to remix your classic album for the 21st century, I'd be worried. I would be worried, you know. What's he doing, you know? But I think Ian, when he heard the results, was convinced.
Why you released it 2 times Aqualung?
Say again, sorry?
Why you released it 2 times Aqualung?
It's not up to me. It's the record company.
Okay.
The answer to your question, if I answer on their behalf, is that the original edition sold out. There was a 40th anniversary box set, and it sold out like in 6 months.
Yeah.
And so they decided to do a 45th edition, which slightly different format.
Yeah.
But it's a box. It's like a book format.
Yeah,
the old one was like a big box of vinyl.
Yeah.
The answer is that the demand was there. People were asking for a reissue.
Do you like your work remix old albums?
I do enjoy it. I learn a lot from doing it, and I get to meet people that are people I grew up listening to, you know, so it's great to be able to meet these people and understand a little bit more about what they were trying to do, you know, with the music and making music in a completely different era.
Okay.
You know, these guys like Ian Anderson were making music in an era when being experimental in rock music was encouraged, and it's not anymore, it's discouraged. And so I kind of envy them in a way, you know, that they were making music in a golden age when pushing boundaries and doing new things and experimenting with rock music was really encouraged, and it was a wonderful era to be doing that. And that era ended a long time ago. But it's great to me to meet people that were there, or right there, creating this music that we now think of as, you know, these masterpieces. And that's great fun, you know, and I learn a lot from that. Yeah.